This week, a Texas woman accused Minnesota Senator Al Franken of groping her while the two of them posed for a photo. Just days after KABC TV personality Leanne Tweeden accused Franken of trying to kiss her and taking an inappropriate photo while she was asleep. The senator issued a statement. "Those allegations are against me, Al Franken." According to a report from BuzzFeed News, Democratic Congressman John Conyers of Michigan settled a wrongful dismissal complaint in 2015 after allegedly sexually harassing a staffer. These are very serious allegations, but the fact that it was first reported by BuzzFeed means that the only people who were aware of the story were those who clicked on the wrong link when they wanted to see memes of the 20 most don't go there moments from the Real Housewives of New Jersey.
CBS has fired Charlie Rose for extremely disturbing and intolerable behavior. His fans responded by shrugging and switching the channel to Tavis Smiley.
As Tamra just mentioned, earlier today, CBS fired Charlie Rose after reports surfaced of 8 women who said they were subjected to inappropriate behavior while working with him on his PBS show. So in the space of a minute, we've run through 3 prominent Democrats embroiled in sexual harassment scandals. Well, you know what they say. People in glass houses should keep their damn hands to themselves. An interview from earlier this year has resurfaced in which Alabama senatorial candidate, see what happens when you try and read fast? In an interview from earlier this year, we heard senatorial Alabama candidate Roy Moore describing seeing his now wife for the first time when she was 15 or 16 years old, and he was in his 30s. The interview appeared in the May 2017 issue of Dude, Ew, No, Gross.
The New York subway system has now the worst on-time performance of any major rapid transit system in the world. On the bright side, they only rank 3rd worldwide when it comes to overwhelming urine smell.
It's definitely a step up. Zimbabwe's President Robert Mugabe resigned in a letter saying the decision was voluntary and that he had made it to allow for a smooth transition of power. The announcement halted an impeachment hearing that had begun against Mugabe, and upon release of the letter, lawmakers roared in jubilation and people began celebrating in the streets. Hey, progressives, I bet you never thought you'd be so jealous of everyone in Zimbabwe, did you? But hey, it's okay. There's still 40 days of impeachment day shopping left. Scott and Drexel, since Scott's not here tonight.
Southern California smog has worsened for the 2nd straight year despite reduced emissions. Also worsening is Southern California smug. Honda is recalling 900,000 Odyssey minivans, which is in sharp contrast to Jeff Sessions, who still does not recall anything.
The Trump administration readied new sanctions Tuesday on North Korea, a day after declaring it a state sponsor of terrorism in a move to put additional pressure on Pyongyang's nuclear program. Well, it's the age-old question, especially this time of year. What do you take away from the people who have nothing? And yesterday, the Trump administration announced that it will end immigration protections for thousands of Haitians living in the United States since the 2010 earthquake in their home country. The Haitians have expressed gratitude as they are expected to have far better living conditions in earthquake-damaged Haiti than in Donald Trump's America.
Nearly 1.5 million consumers signed up for the 2018 Obamacare coverage in the first 11 days of open enrollment. In fairness, most of them just did it for the Mitch McConnell sad face tote bag. The Catholic Church is in the process of vetting the first American for sainthood. If canonized, he will become the patron saint of Crocs and sweatpants.
An unidentified Maryland woman broke into a McDonald's after hours by squeezing through the drive-thru window, helping herself to a soft drink, and making off with a box of items. The woman remains at large and large. Actually, this is the standard bearer for fitness in America today. If you can sneak in and out of McDonald's drive-thru window after hours, then you're not eating too much of it. Right, Chelsea?
The card game, Cards Against Humanity, bought land on the U.S.-Mexico border to block President Trump from building his wall. And if the wall gets built anyway, the land will then be bought by Chutes and Ladders. Last Thursday was the American Cancer Society's Great American Smokeout, aimed at stomping out cigarette addiction. I haven't stopped smoking, however, because it's actually the healthiest of my addictions.
And finally, with Thanksgiving just 2 days away, make sure to take a moment to reflect on all the friends and family in your life and everything you have to be thankful for. Just don't make everyone go around the table and list what they're thankful for, because you'll probably be sitting there until Christmas. But us, we're thankful that the Trump Report starts now.
You're tuning into the destination for TV superfan discussion, AFTERBUZZ TV. And now, let the buzz begin.
Love to eat the turkey.
Oh yeah, there's so much in the news that we could have focused on for the title of this episode, but it's almost Turkey Day, so it's time for the Turkey Song by Adam Sandler, which somehow Anthony in the booth has never heard until right now. But that's all right, we move on. Is it just because I'm old, or is it just because he's not festive? We'll find out by the end of the hour. But make sure you follow him on Twitter at TonyBDead, D-E-D. In any case, welcome to the Trump Report. I'm Christian Bladt at ChristianDMZ. For those watching on YouTube, you'll see to my left, your right, our friend Tamra Brown. Where can people find you, Tamra?
Hey, on all media at Hey Tamra. Hey Tamra _ on Twitter.
I was going to say, wait, not at all media, because I know there's an underscore. And next to her is our friend Chelsea Galicia at Chelsea Galicia. I guess I said everything.
Yeah, thank you.
So you can just say hi.
Hello.
And Scott, you look different.
You know,
I can't quite put my finger on it.
I just got back from Hawaii. It's a little dark.
Our friend Scott was wrapped up in some family obligations. So, of course, without hesitation, Drexel said, I'd be happy to do it. He didn't even know Scott wasn't going to be here.
I didn't.
He actually just locked the door to the studio, so he figured Scott wouldn't be able to get
Saying
it.
that like that, Scott's wrapped up in family obligations. It makes it sound like he's in the mafia.
Yeah. Well, look, we don't talk about his business on the air. Off the air, it's different.
Sure. Smart.
In
Smart,
any
smart.
case, where can people find you, Drexel?
At Drexel Hurd.
And of course, Chelsea and Drexel they host the Political Beat right before us at 6 Pacific, 9 Eastern, and I heard a rumor, and I've mentioned it I think 3 times already, that on December 5th we'll be doing a joint show, which I think I've also already made the joke that doesn't mean that Snoop Dogg will be on the panel. It
He
being a
might.
joint. I mean, he'd be welcome, by the way.
Yeah.
If there's anybody whose opinions I want to hear about the
Snoop
state of
and
the world.
Martha's potluck.
Also,
It'll be
I
our
was on
potluck
that
dinner.
panel. Also, I feel like Snoop will say yes to anything. Like
He
he's
will.
just on everything.
That's true. That's a great
Literally and figuratively.
point. And then that'll sort of be the end of the year for the Political Beat. Right?
Yeah, we're gonna take a little break
I'm thinking I'm gonna do just one more show just to be like, Drexel's already on vacation. But I don't know. Isn't the Alabama vote after that?
December 7th.
It is
Yeah.
December 7th.
All right. So now
Pearl Harbor
I
Day?
feel like I have to. It is Pearl Harbor Day.
Yeah. So maybe I'll just make an appearance on the Trump Report, and
Well, you know what? If Stephen Helmkamp isn't in your seat, but anyway,
he's too busy trying to make
I
sure he
know.
gets that tax cut.
It's a lot of inside jokes for those of us here. And yes, Storage Yard Resident was kind enough to tell us that there was the wrong graphic behind us. And I did notice before we started, but then we got really bogged down in the Adam Sandler graphic. Anyway, so it's about to be Thanksgiving, and I won't ask everyone to name what they're thankful for, but if anybody wants to blurt it out at some point, if you just hear me yell out booze at some point, then you'll know that that's what it is. And of course, there's an obvious. I don't know what's happening. In any case, there's there's the tradition of the president pardoning the turkey, and you notice at the top of the show when we had jokes, I did not make the obvious joke about all of the turkeys that President Trump did not pardon. But I think it's a great place to start. Do you think that he might need to start filling out some pardons for some actual human turkeys, or is it a little premature? I'll ask our guest Drexel to start.
Well, first of all,
Extended family, you're not really a guest, yeah.
Well, it turns out that Donald Trump made the joke today, which at first I was like, but then I was like, that's actually kind of funny. That he said that he was told that he could not reverse Barack Obama's pardon of the prior year's turkeys, so then they could rest easy. Which I thought that was actually kind of funny.
I mean,
It's actually a good-
that's a funny premise.
yeah, I was like, oh, that's funny. At least he's making fun of himself for overturning a lot of Obama stuff.
I think, is that the only time he's ever been vulnerable? Ever?
Probably in his entire life.
I mean, certainly as president. you
Right.
know,
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
There might have been some weaker moments during Celebrity Apprentice, but I don't know. But anyway,
but that there was a meme or a Photoshop of Michael Flynn in a turkey costume that somebody tweeted out earlier and said Michael Flynn running around being like, here I am, you can pardon me. That was really funny. I don't know.
well, I guess it is funny, but
I mean, not funny.
no,
Not ha-ha funny.
Not
just,
how funny,
just
but,
ha
but
funny.
amusing. No, look, I mean, a lot of memes are we need to laugh so that we don't cry. Chelsea, do you feel like the turkeys should be pardoned so that we don't eat them? Because I know how you feel about meat.
I think we should pardon all the turkeys.
Okay, but not the cows because they're bastards, right?
Well, no.
What about
the
pigs?
Oh my gosh.
All right, what
especially
can I
pigs.
eat? A yak? Is it all right if I eat a yak?
No, you can get your protein from a combination of rice and beans and plenty of vegetables. You could be the dashing.
All right, I'm
strong.
gonna just climb through the drive-through of the McDonald's down the street. It'll just be easier. Anyway, yeah.
Pardon
So
the turkeys.
yeah, we can pardon all the turkeys, but I don't know. I think that would be bad for the economy. If all of a sudden all the turkeys got pardoned, but so many of them are frozen already.
Ay.
Well, all right. Tamra, I'm going to leave you out of this conversation.
Still.
You're welcome.
I don't want to get controversial right at the top.
Yeah, I know. Let's wait. But we'll move on to a lighter topic, which is allegations of sexual harassment by some prominent Democrats, including Al Franken. And it's interesting because you got one of those letters signed by people who worked with Al Franken on Saturday Night Live, women, who say that's not who this guy is. And before Charlie Rose got fired, you had a few people saying like, wow, I'm really surprised to hear that. And, I guess that was very swift that he was fired from CBS. I think PBS is still working on it. But also at the top of the show, we talked about John Conyers. And I don't know, to some people, Charlie Rose counts as a Democrat. I think he would pretend that you don't know who I vote for. But if you ever hear him talk, especially on the news, I'm using air quotes, you kind of know who he votes for. So I guess what it comes down to is that no one can take the moral high ground when it comes to this kind of behavior. Tamra, do you think that it's a little hypocritical that just earlier this year, a few months ago, Al Franken was speaking out against people who have these kind of allegations made against them?
I don't think it's hypocritical because of the fact that this is very hard to say, but like we have recognized things just in the past few years that even 6 years ago, I feel like if that photo came out with his hands like that, 6 years ago, nobody would have had it. It would have been laughed at. I don't think it would have caused the sensation that it did now. That being said, I'm not excusing him at all. I'm glad everything has come out about everybody that it's come out about. It's very, very important that it has. But Al Franken admitted it and apologized. I really appreciate it. He said exactly the right thing that needed to be said, I believe.
And I think with the second allegation, he said the right thing and that he hasn't said anything yet. I think he's just like, all right, I gotta really put some time into it. Because you have people who rush to make a statement.
And I might change my mind.
Yeah,
whatever the
depending on
next
what else
thing,
comes.
the next thing that comes out, we don't know.
I mean, it's a good point because, things that have been said or done in the past, I think the standards are very different now, for what's considered.
And that's a slippery slope to say because I don't want to, because you could say like, oh, so Roy Moore didn't think what he was doing was bad, so then he's excused,
He's not excused, but he definitely didn't think it was bad.
But saying my argument, like, we didn't know then, there's anything wrong with making that sort of thoughtless joke at that time. You could excuse a lot of things by just saying like we didn't know at that time.
And
we
I
didn't know what he was doing.
The part of the narrative that is annoying, not annoying, it's a bad choice of word, but the idea is that everything gets lumped together with, well, they all do it, so what Roy Moore does is okay. And it's like, no, none of it's okay.
None of it's okay.
his is exceptionally not okay because these girls are underage. And the fact that they've built that narrative into, it makes you take a long, hard look at evangelicals, that they've embraced the fact that he's like, no, this is what we stand for. But I wanted to ask Chelsea your thoughts when you hear that, obviously, apparently Democratic men can be pigs too. I don't think that that's really surprising. It's just, I guess that there are probably a lot of people now that are either maybe writing some checks, meeting with counsel, trying to figure out what might come up, what you can make go away. Because maybe it's just, I said something really inappropriate. Let me throw a couple $1,000 at that problem, make it go away. I didn't actually do anything.
Yeah. I was bummed to hear about it.
About Al Franken in particular.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people were.
And I imagined if you are a woman next to Al Franken, he is an intimidating, physically intimidating man. I mean, I've talked before about how large his hands are. For some reason, he's just not large as in.
Did you meet him when you went to DC earlier in the year? I thought I knew the answer to that, but that's bad lawyering, by the way, because I understand you should never ask a question you don't know the answer to. But I didn't quite know the answer to it. So
it's not true.
It's not true.
But it has to come out. It all has to come out. I have a little harder time being so. I mean, yes, the Democrats who do this behave just as badly as the Republicans who've done similar things. I mean, some of it, we're lumping sort of everybody together, but I think Christian's right. When your sexual harassment involves children, you're on a whole nother level.
Yeah, because look, there's this outrage at Hollywood right now, rightly so, but the Academy, in I think 1989, they gave an Oscar to Roman Polanski. So, don't act like you're so high and mighty. And, no one is. And, Rick Santorum, believe it or not, made a great point that everybody's talking about how bad Hollywood is. He's like, DC's no better. And I think he's absolutely right.
But one party, you can figure out one, pretends that they
the
are
libertarians,
the ones of godly values.
Yes,
and they're the ones trying to control people's social, who can get married and who can sleep with and who can abortion and all that because of their religious values and beliefs. And so when you are governing from your religion and then committing these, I think, crimes. It feels much more hypocritical than coming from a party that is not trying to tell you how to live, and then they themselves are living.
Right, but let's have the flip side of that, which is the fact that the left and progressives, progressive men are saying that they're the voice of women, they're champions of women. And I'm not saying that that's not necessarily true, but it comes back to bite you when, in the case of Al Franken, because he has been very outspoken. And then you just have okay, so except for when cameras aren't on or when you think nobody's watching.
I don't think that people see that, or at least I haven't seen this as an equality issue.
No, I don't. But I think there was already a bill that he was a co-sponsor of that a female senator asked him to take his name off of it because they felt like it was going to be a distraction. So you see that it's starting to, it could have that kind of impact. I don't quite know where we go from here, but
I'd say we just let them keep on falling out of the tree. The bad apples have just got to
because
fall.
You really do want to drain the swamp. That's what it really comes down to.
What we're going to have to, because this isn't coming to an end anytime soon. More and more are just going to come out of things that have actually happened. And I think to a certain, and it's going to be more people we dislike and more people that we love and hold dear, and who knows who's next. But we're going to get to a point where you can't immediately vilify somebody. It's just a very complicated issue, and people are complicated, and I think we're going to get to a point where everybody's going to have an asterisk next to their name.
It's going to be really unfortunate when there is somebody who falsely accuses somebody of it, and then it's found out, and then all the victims of any of the sexual harassers that have come out will lose a bit of credibility because one person said something that wasn't true.
Because how often it's not even, I don't want to paint conservatives on this, but they are ones I've heard point this out. But how often do we hear about the false accuser of the Duke lacrosse team, which turned out that didn't actually happen. So they'll always go to that. They'll always go to like the handful of instances.
Yeah.
So when somebody falsely accuses a politician and it's proven that it was false, I think you're going to run into a problem. Very quickly, R. Scott Brown in the chat said, how is harassment a partisan issue? It's not. It's just...
For me, it's just more hypocritical from one party.
I think that whichever party someone is a supporter of, they tend to probably find it hypocritical.
On the other side.
Honestly, Republicans were probably a little relieved. It's like, look, it's not just us.
You know who's really relieved? Bill Cosby. I wonder what that man is thinking.
He's eating Jell-O pudding.
I mean, he's like, see, I'm not the only one, people. I was just doing what was trendy. Or I guess it still was. I mean, really, would you... I don't know if, would the Bill Cosby thing have been so shocking if it came out now?
Well, that's the thing. I'll let you get your thought on Tamra. Each new one, it becomes like there could be a really crazy one that comes out in a couple weeks, and even if it's the craziest thing you've ever heard, at this point you're not desensitized. You're like, okay, yeah, of course, there's more. What were you going to say, Tamra?
Well, it's that thing of how you were saying that, there's a difference between Al Franken and what Roy Moore, when it involves underage. In the case of Bill Cosby, that was just rape. That's rape. So
he drugged them. That's a good point. Because
there's a difference between that and just harassment, I guess.
Now,
it's all...
that should be the title of the episode. But Drexel, so when it comes to John Conyers, turns out he might have used some public funds to do that settlement in 2015. So talk a little bit about sort of just the political ramifications, because it becomes political, because you have people who, of course, look, Al Franken made a dent, and with some people he made a dent in the wrong direction. So when you give them an excuse to be like, well, obviously he has to resign, what kind of fallout do you see from what we have now? I'm not even going to talk about the unknown, what's coming, but let's start with Al Franken. What do you think will happen?
Well, I just want to back up real quick because
sure,
we mentioned. I know R. Scott Brown said in the chat room it's not a partisan issue. For Democrats, this is not something that came out of left field, because we saw that in our own party during the 2016 election. I saw more progressives attack Hillary Clinton as a woman than I did in this. Not, I won't even say more. In the same amount of people that are attacking Hillary Clinton for being a female were the same progressive, were as much as the Republicans were on that side. So this did not shock me at all, because there was a reason why they called them Bernie Bros. Because at the end of the day,
I have no idea how these conflate.
Well, because sexual harassment, verbally or physically, is pretty much sexual harassment.
Well, I was reading an article earlier today about, staffers on both campaigns in 2016 filed complaints to, obviously neither candidate, but to people that work on the campaigns. There definitely was some of that.
But so this isn't an issue where that surprised me at all. I hope it didn't surprise anybody else. I was a little disappointed to hear about Al Franken, because I said the day, probably within the hour it came out, I was like, Al Franken's a really good senator for the state of Minnesota. Like, he's really good.
If he resigns and Roy Moore goes in,
the good thing about Minnesota is that it has a Democratic governor. The Democratic governor will then appoint a replacement senator if Al Franken ends up resigning. That replacement senator could be Keith Ellison, who's also from Minnesota, and then it would trigger a special election in Keith Ellison's district, and thus a Democrat would still hold that seat. So I don't know that Minnesota is going to be in a bit of a trouble politically. It would just suck to lose somebody like Al Franken, who's very vocal about issues pertaining to women, as he has been over the past few years. And maybe it is a sort of like internal thing for him, where he feels like he has to make up for certain things that he did in the past, and he has since then, as a United States Senator, said, here's what I'm going to do to make up for those things. Even though he hasn't said it out loud, he has been under the radar about the way that he goes about creating legislation. On John Conyers, listen, a problem is a problem. They got to go. You know, and if you are using taxpayer dollars, I know the difference to me between Republicans and Democrats on this issue is the way that Democrats have gone about these these investigations. Democrats will go out and be like, yeah, we're going after our own people. Republicans are like, no. We'll protect our own people because we need the votes. I mean, you saw that in Kay Ivey's statement last week. You saw that in Donald Trump's statement today. You saw that in Roy Moore's statement about whether or not he was going to vote the right way. So it's all about how they vote and less about principle. And to Chelsea's point, Republicans like to think that they're morally better than Democrats, and religiously they might be. On some level, they might feel that way, and that's fine. But their actions and the way that they legislate and the way that they vote do not speak to the morals that they are trying to project out into the world. And in this case, Democrats would win because they are starting to say, we're going after our own people. We told you we do that because that's the way that we handle this business, and that's the way that we handled it from the beginning, from the moment that we found out about it. It's happening here in California. We just talked about it on our show. Here in California politics, we've got 2 or 3 assemblymen who I know a lot of Democratic clubs have called for their immediate resignation within the past few hours. So Democrats are leading the charge to say, you got to go.
And I think that honestly, that's the way that I think you probably have to handle it. And I guess with Al Franken in particular, and we'll move on from him in a moment, it's he really has to figure out like what else is going to come out. And if nothing else is going to come out, it's possible you can weather it at this point. But if you know that, okay, well, there's going to be, we've had A, B, we'll see D, E, and F. Yeah, probably, I think that comparing it to Charlie Rose, who was suspended yesterday and then fired today, they didn't have to dig very deep, So I think that in some cases, yeah, you just have to, and I mean, look, in CBS, that's a huge corporation that's like, yeah, we can't have this, but we can't stand for that.
Republicans also elected a person, not only in their primary, but in the general election, who is a known sexual predator. So
I mean, he says it of himself.
I mean, the statement that he had about Roy Moore today he was the same statement that he had about Vladimir Putin. He was, well, he denied it. Yeah. He was like, well, he said he didn't do it, so I believe him. And then he went on to say, well, we don't want a liberal in the United States Senate because he's weak on crime, which Doug Jones is not weak on crime because he's a career prosecutor who prosecuted the people that bombed the church during the Civil Rights Movement. So, like, to say he's weak, Donald Trump just likes to throw out these things and he doesn't even know what he's talking about half the time. Weak on the military, weak on crime, weak on... You're like, what are you talking about? You don't even know what you're talking about. Somebody just put that on a colorful Post-it note and you probably... Or in a coloring book and you probably just read it.
At least he could read it. I mean, you want to look at it that way. So let's move on from this because we spent a lot more on it. But I think it's an important issue. And you know what? I feel like it's not going away. I'm sure we'll have something to talk about.
Take a pool at this point. Who's next?
Who's next? So in the chat, Portal Player said, what's the chances for Trump's tax plan to pass? And I think that there's some newish news this evening that I heard Drexel talking about. Is it confirmed that Lisa Murkowski says she'll vote, or she's leaning towards it one way or the other? And according to someone else in the chat, that, Portal Player again, McCain and Murkowski are both going to vote yes.
Which is weird because the way that the Senate is going about this tax bill in terms of procedure, in terms of not normal order, in terms of everything that John McCain had said about the health care bill is happening right now.
Yeah.
I mean, Orrin Hatch, I was listening to an interview with Claire McCaskill today. She was like, if we had done this on the flip side, Orrin Hatch, as the chairman of the finance the committee that's pushing this tax bill out, would be up in arms about it. And yet she felt that he just got his marching orders and they said, ram it through as fast as you can. And we got to get this through. And that's what he did. He took his marching orders, whether or not he felt the procedure was fine. So for John McCain to be voting yes on something on principle, listen, John McCain's not going to run for re-election. Jeff Flake is obviously not running for re-election. Those are 2 Senate seats that Democrats can pick up in the case
unless
of
Sheriff Joe runs.
Oh, Jesus.
I just said that for her to react that way. Go ahead. Finish your thought, Drexel.
So listen, if John McCain wants to go out in this way for increasing middle class families' taxes and cutting taxes for the wealthiest 1%, then yeah, I mean, that's going to be his legacy and that's what he's going to go out on. But listen, it's a little crazy.
And my understanding is that Murkowski's yes vote is going to be because they're going to include Arctic drilling in either separate.
I mean,
bill
if it's that
or,
easy, why don't you just include like 10 things in the bill, and then you'll get 10 more senators to definitely vote, and then you don't have to worry about any defections. So if it's that simple, but I mean, I guess they feel like that's going to be the difference maker. But it'll be funny if somebody else is just sick
because
that day and
I
doesn't
think
vote.
she thought that the tax bill as was going to hurt her constituents. Smart lady. But when the drilling is going on, I mean, everybody in the state of Alaska gets a stipend. I mean, it is a
you get a couple $1,000s, I think,
when
every year.
drilling is going on. So then, I guess that would be more than enough to make up for the increase in your taxes.
Which you would think that, I mean, listen, Republicans, sometimes they just don't make any sense, because we just went through an environmental issue in another red state in South Dakota with Keystone, billowing 200,000 gallons of oil all over the state. And so the idea of creating environmental, another environmental issue in Alaska, a potential environmental issue in Alaska, Republicans should be halting all environmental projects right now until they can figure out what's going on. I didn't even see a statement from the governor of South Dakota, because he's a Republican, on whether or not Keystone would be or at least the pipeline, like, helping his state out. I didn't even see that. Now, he might have, I mean, not even that day I didn't see a statement. He might have.
The spill as a whole seems very quiet. Like, there just hasn't been a lot of media attention on it, I feel like.
Oh, yeah, no.
I mean, remember where we were a year ago, on this pipeline?
Yeah, we were 3 studios down and Drexel was crying.
And people were driving out to stop the pipeline because they said they leak. And these people are like, they don't leak. We got state-of-the-art technology. And then, like, a year to the day, another close one leaks. I mean, 200,000. That's not a leak. That's like an explosion.
But I think, to Tamra's point, this is a great time if you're someone who doesn't give a shit about the environment. These are great circumstances for you. I don't mean you as in anyone in particular. For one who just doesn't care and is like, we're going to just go ahead and do whatever we want with easing of some regulations and that sort of thing. So I'm not surprised that there hasn't been more media attention. Especially, and if there was media attention, it would be fake news.
Not only has there not been media attention on that, but there has not been media attention on the fact that the United States is the lone holdout after Syria on the Paris Climate Agreement. Like, that's even crazier. I don't even know if you guys talked about this on the show in the last couple of weeks, but like, that's the other crazy thing. Like, the United States is the holdout. Mm-hmm. And France is the
well, Syria signed on. There was something
Syria
we talked about.
on,
we joked about that last week. That that Syria has a more enlightened view than the United States on the issue.
And Emmanuel Macron's over there, like, I guess France will foot the United States' bill.
Yeah.
To like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I know. France is like, usually when we go out to lunch, the U.S. picks up the check. But I mean, right. I guess we'll do it this time. But we're gonna need to get the U.S. back sometime soon.
And somebody in the chat room, the Democrat said the Paris Climate Agreement is non-binding; it's only symbolism.
That's the demon knot.
Demon knot. Yeah. I don't even know what he said. The United States is nothing but symbolism. So if we can't stand for something, then that's a problem. So I don't care if it is nothing but just a piece of paper, a paper airplane flying around the world. At least the United States' name is on something, because that means we actually stand for making the world a better place.
Let's move on to a fun hot button topic, which is North Korea. That it's a state sponsor of terror once again. So congratulations, you guys are back on the list. When I thought that was going to be big news, I thought that the title of this episode could have been "Your Kiss Is on My List" by Hall & Oates, but maybe another week. And now they're going to put some more sanctions on there. Tamra, you haven't been on the panel when I've talked about this in the past. I continue to not really be worried about North Korea, but it's such a volatile little man who's apparently short and fat. I read that from somebody who knows
some
people.
News article.
Yeah. Is this the kind of guy that maybe I'm taking too lightly, and maybe we should be a little bit more, considering that it's just basically a piñata that Trump continues to just whack with a stick. None of the candy's fallen out yet, but it might.
I go back and forth on whether I feel like it's something worthy of actually taking seriously or not. A friend of mine pointed out that like when everybody was concerned in California that we're going to be the first target, they're like, Kim Jong-un is such a huge fan of Hollywood and Hollywood history. Like, he would not want to destroy any of that, So sometimes I think there's a lot
in Hollywood.
But if he loves Hollywood so much, maybe he would destroy Hollywood so he could build a new Hollywood, and he could be Hollywood.
Wow.
So yeah, that's right. That's like a serial killer mentality.
LA is
I'm just going
to
kill
Orange
her.
County, where Dennis Rodman lives, or that's where he lived when
that
I was
where he
in
lives?
college. Well, when I was in UC Irvine, he was in Newport. I don't know if he still is.
So you could run into him and be like, give a message to your pal Kim Jong Un.
Yeah, but I'm thinking he might not, blow up, the home of his BFF, Dennis.
I also think that, listen, when you get people like, they're birds of a feather. You get people like Kim Jong-un and Donald Trump and these people who talk a big game but who are terrified of what the consequences of that would be. It's easy to shoot a rocket into the water. It's a very different story to shoot a rocket at the United States. Like, they would never do that. Even Russia, Russia did this hacking of our computers, but they would never attack the United States directly. And so you've got these big people who just do not want to go into conflict with us because they don't know what allies are going to... They would never want to be the ones to start World War III because everybody would be going after them. The idea that the Great Britain and France and Germany would not be going after North Korea, that is not a position North Koreans wants to be in.
It's the it's the Cold War mentality of the mutually assured destruction. You're just like, well, we can't,
right?
And sure, you might have come close a few times. Maybe somebody took out a president here or there, who knows? But an actual we're gonna just have Red Dawn was never gonna happen. They were never actually gonna send troops.
Did you guys watch Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2?
I'm gonna bet Chelsea
Go
hasn't
on.
seen it.
Okay, so
Tamra's in.
at the end of the movie, or in the Battle of Hogwarts, the Malfoys ran away at the end, and they were running across the bridge. That's how I feel Donald Trump would be in the middle of a war. Him and the Ivanka, they would look back and they would be like, we can't be a part of this war because that's...
The look on Chelsea's face for people listening on iTunes is, who are you and what are you talking about?
Listen, I love Harry Potter.
She's also trying really hard not to laugh, which is appreciated that you're trying not to. But Tamra, now you're in. You're like, finally, in terms I can understand.
The Trumps are the Malfoys, if that's all I'm trying to say.
There's a lot of talk about we only have a couple minutes left, but there's a lot of talk about potential changes to net neutrality, and I don't understand it. And what I'm asking people to do...
You can watch our show to understand net neutrality.
Because I'm going to use an example from a friend of a friend sent this to me and says, let me explain net neutrality in the most horrific way. If the FCC dismantles it and you get your internet from Verizon, they could charge you more money, or no, they could charge you more money to use Google, but it would be free for you to use Yahoo because they own it. So if that doesn't sound good to you, you should support net neutrality. Now, I'll hear equally convincing things against it. So it's one of...
Tell me.
I can't remember. I just got this today.
It's all BS.
Well, I'm just saying, people will say it with such conviction. I'm like, oh, well, what they just said made sense. So what you guys are saying, and if people want to check out the political beat from earlier today, they can. It just confuses me, and I would like people to comment in the chat, on the archive version of this.
I cannot believe you're confused on this.
I'm not very smart, okay? That's not my fault, okay?
Oh, Christian.
What?
Yes, you are.
I mean...
What we did talk about on the show was that this is an issue that people are clearly not paying attention to because, and Lady Goth said it in our chat room, which was, we're just distracted so much by something. So right now we're distracted by a tax bill, and now we're distracted by net neutrality, and people don't know enough about net neutrality, but they do know about their taxes going up.
Yeah.
So Republicans...
So it's the time to...
So Republicans can ram through things that people are confused about, which is why they muddled the waters on Obamacare, confused the shit out of people. They've muddied the waters on big legislation because they want to get through what they want to get through. And if you want to know about net neutrality, definitely watch our show. But once you unpack it all, you're like, oh shit, that makes a whole lot of sense.
But everything I've heard about their reasoning for pulling back, government shouldn't micromanage. Transparency, great. We're going to be transparent about the poison that we kill you with.
And just think, if they do it, streaming transparent on Amazon Instant Video is going to be a lot more expensive.
Without
Jeffrey Tambor?
Jeffrey Tambor.
They've been arguing that net neutrality stifles innovation. Right, because the communication companies are not making enough billions in profits to be able to invest in innovation.
Well,
it's
we only have a minute left.
ridiculous.
Tamra, do you understand it as well as they do? Because
I don't.
Okay, thank you. Even if you're lying, I just appreciate that, because I'm really confused on the issue, and I want to not be. So I will check out the political beat from earlier today.
It's going to be more expensive. When does it go well when big companies decide the rules of an industry? Like, have our cell phone prices gone up or down since all of the consolidations have happened and we've got just AT&T and Verizon?
I mean, by the way, I have Sprint, so I just want
Metro
to
PCX.
I just want to poke the hole right in that theory. I think it's a good point. I think also the fact that the iPhone X costs $1,000, that's probably a bigger problem.
No, but
that doesn't enter into
apples and oranges. We're talking about the internet service, the telephone service.
Okay.
ATTU versus
Has it been
Verizon
better
versus-
No.
when we consolidate?
No.
And when we grow these ginormous corporations and they have
Who
the
amongst us
influence.
does not hate AT&T with a blinding
I've
passion?
great
been
point.
AT&T for years. I don't hate. I mean, I do. We do.
Weren't you posting about customer service just the
I'm
other day?
always posting about
Yeah.
customer
And
service.
then-
I love my Cricket phone. I only pay $45 a month.
Of course, Anthony
by
has the Cricket
AT&T.
phone.
Oh man.
Yeah, but this is just not going to go well. I mean, let's pull back regulations. This is going to be like the 2007 housing crisis. Except it's going to be a
internet
cell phone crisis.
Yeah.
So there'll be a movie about it. So then it'll help me understand it. Anyway, final thought.
I just
Drexler,
want
we
to
do
point
have
out.
to go.
I wrote an article on Medium. Or
Oh,
wrote
right.
a piece on Medium, so you can check it out. If you follow me on Twitter, I tweeted it out. And then
You're at Drexel Hurd.
At Drexel Hurd. You can find today's piece on Medium, all about the Democrats. And
I like the title.
It's Chelsea and Scott, and we all kind of like. I was sending it out, and I was like, "What should this title be?" And it's called "Are You There, America? It's Me, the Democrat." So check it out on Medium.com.
Well, you got the first plug in. And Chelsea, where can people find you?
At Chelsea Galicia.
And obviously, next Tuesday, you'll be on the political beat with Drexel, and then you'll
Yes.
be over here with us. And Tamra, where can people find you?
At HeyTamra_ on Twitter.
And you can find me at ChristianDMZ, and here at AfterBuzz, let's see. Sundays I do Star Trek, Monday I do Marvel TV, today I do Trump Report, Wednesday I do South Park. So 4 days a week you can find me doing something. But follow me at ChristianDMZ. Anyway, thanks for everybody in the chat.
Not enough of you.
And there's not enough of me. I agree. Thank you. Thank you. At Tony Be Dead. He spoke because he wanted me to get one more plug in. Anyway, thanks, Anthony. And thanks to everybody in the chat. We'll see you next Tuesday. Thanks so much.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.